As the pastor of a large church, I am not unfamiliar with criticism. In fact, there are weeks that I feel like I can't win for losing, and that coming off the stage on Sunday morning, I am both the hero to some and the great white devil to many others. And so what I've learned over time as a man who wants to learn from the criticism he receives is that it's hard to learn from and hard to respect a man or a woman that's loaded up on a spring, just waiting to pounce upon any error or mistake that I make. Now, if that's true just as a pastor with his congregation, how much more true is this in a marital relationship? How paralyzing would it be if your spouse has their eyes focused on you for the sole purpose, or at least what it seems to you is the sole purpose of correcting, rebuking, and making sure you have every I dotted and every T crossed? Well, in this session, we're going to talk about how to really dial into what's an important decision, what's an important fight, and what might need to just be absorbed or let go. And so as we move into this session, let's kind of hone our minds, specifically if our relationship now is marked by conflict, and there's a lot of conflict in our home. If you have your Bibles, why don't you go ahead and grab those. We'll be in Song of Solomon, chapter 7. My wife is from Longview, Texas, and so if you were to fold a map of the great nation of Texas at Dallas, Longview, Texas, and Abilene, Texas would touch. And so she's in the piney woods closer to Louisiana, so very tall pine trees. She still thinks it's one of the more beautiful places on earth, despite the fact that I've tried to take her with me as we've traveled to show her that, yes, pretty, but not in maybe top 10 destination places in the country, let alone world. And so something that got into my wife's soul, and I don't really know how it got into her soul, is that my wife loves fire, and she likes fire in a fireplace. Better not be one of those little gas things where you flip the switch and it comes on. It better not be the fake wood with the fire. Like, she wants wood popping, there be a legitimate danger of house burning down, fire, and it doesn't necessarily need to be overly cold for us to do that. And so every year there is this kind of 2-month window of tension in our relationship where she wants a fire and I'm saying it's 72 outside. It's not time for a fire. Well, it was 64 when we woke up this morning, to which I respond, we still don't need a fire, all right? You're literally asking me to start a fire and turn on the air conditioner, of which I will refuse, all right? And then you kind of meet in the middle somewhere in there and we start the fire. So we have a wood-burning fireplace that for about 4 months out of the year is constantly burning. In fact, we ran it so much this past year that the pipe that the gas comes out of literally melted and broke off of the deal. So now we can no longer light the fire the easy way. Now you literally got to build it. So I'm like a Boy Scout, all right, looking for kindling someplace, all right. Where can I find small branches and leaves? And so I've got to build the fire in this way. And it used to be really easy. The fire used to be really easy. You know, you just kind of put the wood in there and light it and turn the gas on. You know, try not to catch your face on fire, and voila, you got yourself a fire, and it would crackle, and mama would be happy, and therefore I would be happy. And then one of the things actually that you kind of miss in the ease of turning it on and getting it started is, specifically in some of the ice storms we had this year, is eventually you're going to have to add wood to the fire. And so I, as God has designed me and built me, thought through that and brought some wood up onto the back porch. What I completely underestimated was that this fire that I started when I left for work was still going to be burning when I came home 8-9 hours later, and that the wood that I had put on the porch would be gone. And so now it's getting dark, it's Antarctica outside, and I've got to somehow walk through the ice and snow and get more wood and get that wood up to the porch so we can continue to burn the fire. So really I've found that relationships aren't much different than this. I think for all of us, kind of the heat and excitement of things getting started is really easy for most of us, because attraction in and of itself produces a zeal and a gladness and an excitement and a kind of nervous energy. And then what happens over time, and if we've got to be able to be honest here or we don't have a shot, what happens over time is the routine of knowing one another and the pace of life takes kind of that heat that was so easy, that zeal that was so easy, and it begins to affect it. Where maybe there was once a roaring inferno, there was creativity, there was discipline, there was pursuit. Now all of a sudden, under the weight of life, under the pace of life, that inferno has dwindled, maybe just into a nice little glowing fire, and that's a good spot to be, but maybe it's kind of smoldering now, and maybe there's barely any heat left on that fire, and I think in that moment, people begin to say things that are non-covenantal. So for the Christian who understands the marriage relationship as one of covenant, we do not fall out of love with our spouses because love is not emotive. It's built on the covenant. Our love is, make me feel this way if you want me to stay. That's not how we love. Our love is, I'm giving myself to you regardless. And so for the Christian, we cannot fall out of love because our love is not predicated upon emotions alone, but rather finds its strength in the covenant. Now, with that said, you can expect the longer you are together, not that the fire of your love would not diminish, but just that it's going to change. It's going to change because things in life necessitate it. There are stresses, anxieties, concerns, fears, and weariness that come the longer you're together, simply because of how you move from young energy to your body changing to kids being introduced into the marriage relationship are a game changer. Can I get a glory? I mean, everything changes when that new little soul is introduced into the family dynamic. Now, it is spectacular, but it changes things. There's another soul to worry about, another soul to be engaged, another heart to be nurtured and cared for. You've got recovery. You've got of actually carrying the child and giving birth to it. All the rules start to change. Now that there's this other soul in the room, there's a newfound weariness introduced into the relational dynamic. Whereas one time you went to bed late and you slept till you got up. Now you're catching sleep wherever you can and hoping not to crash your car or kill your kid. And there's a stress that kind of enters the environment. And how to manage your money, and how to do this, and how to save for this, and how all these are stressors that begin to damper, kind of cut the oxygen out of, if we're not careful, the heat of our love for one another. And although the fires at times might change, and probably should change, they don't have to go out. We just have to tend the fire. You just have to continue to put logs on the fire. And so that's what we're going to read about in Song of Solomon chapter 7. It's a very interesting text. So let's start in verse 1. How beautiful are your feet in sandals, O noble daughter. Now, here's what's interesting. Every time Solomon has talked about his wife's body, he's always started where? At her eyes. Always started at her eyes. And this time, we're not starting at her eyes. We're starting at her feet. So we've always gone kind of top down. Now we're going down up. There's some significance there, but let's keep reading. How beautiful are your feet in sandals, O noble daughter. Your rounded thighs are like jewels, the work of a master hand. Your navel is a rounded bowl that never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is a heap of wheat encircled with lilies. Men, look right at me. Don't. All right, don't. This is not the day in which we live. You cannot, don't ever use with your wife, regardless of where you think you are, the word heap and belly together to try to encourage her. Boo, your belly is like a heap of wheat. Like, that's going bad for you, man. She's not going to be like, oh, thank you so much. All right, now, let's finish out what he's doing here. Your belly is a heap of wheat encircled with lilies. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. That's just the most consistent thing he says about her breast, although he is about to switch it up here in another couple of verses. Now, here's what I want to draw your attention to. Now, they're older now. They've been together for a while, and he has, in their fights, in their makeup sex, in their honeymoon, he has always said, your eyes, your hair, your teeth, all of them, right? He started down, and now he is learning to see her in different ways. He has now started at her feet, and what he's doing in this text that you need to kind of ferret out is the things that he is complimenting are things that only he sees. And so no one knows what the queen's thighs look like but Solomon. No one knows. They don't dress that way. There are no bikinis. There are no short skirts. The only one who has seen the queen's thighs is the king. The only one that had seen, looked upon, and rejoiced in that heaping belly of wheat is the king. See, husbands, wives, one of the real gifts that God has given to you and I is the treasure hunt of finding these things in our spouses that no one else knows is there. What a gift to be given by God to spend decades with people, Lord willing, in covenant-safe relationship where you can know these kind of intricate intimacies that no one else gets to see. So there are things about Lauren that only I know. Her best girlfriends don't know. I believe there are times that Lauren doesn't know. That I just get to see these things in her that are amazing and are beautiful that no one but me will ever get to see. And that's a great and beautiful gift given to me by God. And the way I get to take advantage of that gift is to bring those things to Lauren's attention. Whether that be date night or whether that be on vacation or, when we were in the Q&A, she talked about how often we'll sit down and talk about what our goals are, where we're trying to head, whether or not we're on track, how we want to handle the kids, where we are. That's one of those times that I want to say to her, hey, I've seen this in you. It's so amazing. I just think this is so amazing about you. To which oftentimes she'll respond, really? Like that's a gift. So really, if we want to throw logs on the fire, men, women, here's the first thing you have to do. Pay attention. Pay attention. You have this opportunity to see things that no one else is going to get to see. In fact, the Lord might just give you insight that even goes beyond how your spouse sees themselves. What a gift. And dang, what a treasure hunt. How exciting is that? We must pay attention. And then he goes on to talk about really not just her physical form. In the poem, it'll look that way, but it really is a celebration of how she carries herself. Look at this in verse 4. Your neck is like an ivory tower. Now, he's commending her dignity. She walks in such a way. She carries herself with great dignity. And so if I, one of the things that I saw in Lauren when I got sick, so 5 years ago, was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. Well, I guess I was always terminal like everyone else, but was diagnosed with brain cancer. And one of the things that I saw in my wife in those days was just a steadfast dignity that we belonged to the Lord and the Lord was in control. It was stunning. In fact, through it all, although I know she wrestled with doubt, although I know that there were very hard days in watching me suffer, just her strong neck and confidence in the Lord was a sight to see. And so Solomon here is saying, you walk in such dignity, moves on from there and says, your eyes are pools in Heshbon by the gate of Bath Rabim. You have depth. He's rejoicing in his wife's depth. So yes, there are these kind of physical components, but he's also saying, man, you've got a depth to you that I find spectacular. If you're paying attention, you can see and watch where your spouse is growing, and you can comment and encourage that growth in a way that no one else can. When someone knows and sees and is intimate with all of your weaknesses, and yet continues to be your biggest cheerleader, pointing out where you're growing in areas that more than likely you do not feel like you are growing, that is a gift from the Lord, and it only happens if you're paying attention. And then he moves on from there. Your nose is like a tower of Lebanon, which looks towards Damascus. Again, I don't recommend you lifting these texts and like texting them to your girl. Hey, look up Song of Songs, chapter 7. Or that's going to go bad for you, all right? My nose is a tower of Lebanon. All right, so he's commending her in this sense, her strength. There is a strength that I see in you. And then from there, your head crowns you like Carmel, and your flowing locks are like purple. That the way she walks in her authority as a queen, as a mother, as a woman, that she carries herself in her authority in a way that, according to his own words, listen to this, a king is held captive in the tresses. That how she lives in dignity, how she lives in strength, how she walks in nobility, how she has interacted and grown in depth. He's saying the king is held captive by these things. And one of the things we said, one of the reasons, we actually quoted Tommy Nelson a couple of sessions ago now, in fact, a few sessions ago now, if not more, about why we should be really careful to not awaken love until it's time, is because, and this was Tommy's argument. Tommy's argument was the fuel in marriage for sexual desire isn't the kind of newness or thrill of the unknown, but rather the fuel, the logs on the fire of physical desire in marriage isn't the new thrill, but rather the dignity, growth, and interaction of our spouse, and how we marvel at how they walk, how they interact, and how they live. And so he's talking about her dignity, her depth, her strength. He's talking about the authority in which she walks. And then look where we go. Verse 6. How beautiful and pleasant you are, O loved one, with all your delights. There we are on delights, just waiting for myrrh to break out here. Your stature is like a palm tree, and your breasts are like its clusters. Favorite verse in this whole book. I say, I will climb the palm tree and lay hold of its fruit. Oh, may your breast be like clusters of the vine, and the scent of your breath like apples, and your mouth like the best of wine. So I want you to watch how this has happened here. So they've been together a while. There's not the newness of, oh, I haven't seen that before. Or in fact, if we're honest, the body changes as we get older, correct? There are things that aren't as tight. Stuff has shifted around. We are not what we once were. And yet, what has driven his desire? What has made him as aroused as he was all those years ago? Her dignity, her depth, those unseen jewels that only he knows, her strength, how she carries herself, and as he all the more has grown in a knowledge of her, it has not diminished his zeal, but this brother wants to climb the tree. It's no longer be careful with the fawns. It's love you so much, climb you like a tree. Like, it's just so, God, I love that verse. You could probably send that one. Actually, don't do that. Right? It's her dignity and strength that is fueling the furnace of physical desire. It's not that he doesn't physically desire her. It's the thing that is fueling that physical desire. Isn't mystery. It's not newness of wonder what's underneath all of that, but rather her dignity, the way she holds herself, the way she walks, is in and of itself arousing to him as he sees her live out her life. This is a beautiful picture of what happens when we pay attention to what the Bible calls the wife of our youth. I've been married for 15 years next month. Lauren has been at least 3 different women in those 15 years. Now, I'm not making a joke. There was the Lauren that we had just graduated from college. We didn't have any kids. I was traveling full time, and we lived in airplanes and cheap hotel rooms. There was that Lauren. That Lauren was a unique creature. There was Lauren who became a pastor's wife and had her first child. A lot of the rules changed, how she wanted to be approached changed, the things she valued changed, internal struggles changed. So we had struggles back here. They changed. So I've got this new woman I'm living with now, but she's the wife of my youth. And then you've got what I'll just call post-brain cancer Lauren and post-turn and our relationship Lauren. And those are the 3 Laurens I have lived with. And each one had unique gifts, and each one had unique challenges, and each one had unique opportunities. And if you're not paying attention, you miss the delights that God gives you in the spouse of your youth because you got distracted by the madness of the world. You're going to have to be careful. We'll talk about this. The world will press on you a type of cruise control when it comes to your spouse. They will be the easiest to neglect. You will just assume that it's safe, that they're there, that they're not going, and you will neglect, and this fire will begin to die and might just go out altogether. And because we're a covenant people, we don't eject then, but go back to gathering kindling, go back to building the fire back up. In fact, the testimony of many of us is, and I've met several of you in here that have been married, a couple of you, as long as I've been alive. And your testimony would be, hey, brother, fire's gone all the way out before, and we just acknowledged it, repented, sought each other's forgiveness, and got back to work trying to build the fire again. So don't lose heart if you're like, sheesh, the fire's out. Now, do you have a long road to rekindle it? Maybe. But start gathering kindling. Well, what's kindling? Well, pay attention. What are the strengths in your wife? Go back to some of our sessions. What do you need to own? Where might you seek forgiveness? Where have you lacked grace? Where do you see and spot strength and dignity and those things? How can you begin to just throw a little dry wood there on that fire and begin to breathe back into it? Where can we get fuel and begin to pour it on there? I think fuel is probably the wrong illustration because I have not seen well a fire go from completely cold to roaring inferno. No, it's a few twigs at a time, a few leaves at a time, great care being taken, slow, gentle, breathing life back into where there once was a burning inferno. The log of paying attention is imperative to keeping our fire going. The next thing I want you to see is I want you to look at her response. I love her response. So here he is talking about all these things. Look at her response. I just love this. It goes down smoothly for my beloved, gliding over lips and teeth. I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. I mean, she is playful. right? I mean, here he is talking about all of these things. I want to climb that tree, grab hold of the fruit. And she's like, drink it, baby. It glides over the teeth, right? There's this kind of playful interaction here among husband and wife who have been married quite some time. So one, pay attention. That's the log on the fire. Pay attention to the desires, the strengths, the growth of your spouse, the things that only you get to see. Mind for those, look for those, be dialed in, pay attention. Where they're growing in depth, pay attention. What they value, how they're changing, how they're growing, pay attention. And then here's the second thing, fight for fun. There is, for whatever reason, as we grow older, a type of sad seriousness, a type of freedom-robbing crustiness that begins to cover our relationships. You got to fight that. Be playful. In the book of Titus, the author of Titus, the Apostle Paul, tells Titus that a woman should love her husband with brotherly affection. That we should be friends. And so find ways to be playful and flirty. Now, asterisk, side note. If you think it's flirty and fun, and they think it's annoying and a nightmare, it's not flirty and fun. All right, now that's important, because if we go back to expectation, the last thing I want to do with, fight for fun is make you go, I'm going to pour ice cold water on her when she's in the shower. I love you, baby! Right? I mean, that's not what we're talking about here. My hope is that you will have paid attention enough to know what your spouse thinks is cute and what they do not think is cute. And so when my wife sings on the weekends at the church I pastor, and every time she sings during session, I sneak into the green room, I take her phone, and I take a selfie of myself, usually like blowing her a kiss or like flexing or just something ridiculous, and I set her screensaver and all of her functions to that photo. And I'm just being playful. Now, if I did that and she was like, will you leave my friggin' phone alone? Then I'm not doing that the next time she sings. Right? Because I know she doesn't think this is cute. Another thing is it's a fun thing for us to talk about fun things with our kid. So the last day of school was coming up, and so Lauren and I began to plot on them. So what if when they came home, there was just a big bucket of water balloons and water guns with a note that just says, arm yourselves, suckers. And then we come out and work them. So here's what's funny. I mean, just being playful like that, like just being an idiot. Like for whatever, that does some cool things in your relationship with one another. It keeps the heat up. All right, don't get so crusty. Be playful, but be playful in a way that your wife or husband enjoys, not in a way that gets on their nerves. And listen, I'm not a fool. I also know there are times that it was really cute now, and now it's not cute anymore. And so again, back to stuff we already covered. Proceed cautiously. Sorry, boo, I thought that you thought that was cute. I'm out. Fight for fun. Fight for it. Don't be so crusty. Listen, life is hard. It gets really weighty. Learn how to trust in the sovereign goodness of God in difficult days. Learn to laugh. I mean, like laugh where your cheek, you laugh so you had to hold your face down. Your face started to hurt. Figure out how to do those things. Figure out what they love to do. This goes back to paying attention somewhat. But fight for fun. Now, here's a simple task coming out of this session. What I want to encourage you to do is get a bit creative and do something for your spouse that you wouldn't normally do. So based on the principles that we just covered and what we just saw in the Word of God, a real simple way to begin to engage one another that would be helpful is just
for a little surprise, just a little something different than you normally do. And so men, maybe for you, that's engaging in some housework that maybe you never do. Ladies, for you, maybe that's you take an initiative on a date that he would enjoy, or let's just find a small way outside of the norm to serve and to express our delight in the other that God has given to us.